Tonight I'm going to pull out this 2009 Arctic 500 and see what's going on with the rear brakes. They're hydraulic and the cylinder's not moving at all. The neighbor brought this by because it wasn't running. It set for a 1.5 years or so. So I got that issue fixed with the carburetor and got to looking over the machine, and I like the machine really well. It's got a Suzuki engine with a belt drive transmission, kind of like a golf cart. And it reminds me of the King Quad, Suzuki King Quad, which Arctic sold a 300, which is pretty much the same thing, rebadged. You know, they don't get a lot of attention, but it's a pretty sophisticated four-wheeler. I like it pretty well. We're going to tear into those brakes tonight and see what's going on. Well, folks, you know, the pedal had no feel, and now looking at it, you can see that the linkage is sticking, and it's on its pivot point here. The hydraulic pressure has no real tactile feedback, so having it up on the lift like this is the way to check. I can turn the wheel and then apply the brake with my other hand and see that it is in fact working. It's just sticking on this pivot point. It's got a spring. The return spring is pretty stiff, stiffer than I can push by hand. So I'm going to start by removing this nut and cleaning the shaft, repacking it with grease and putting it back on. That doesn't seem too far-fetched that this bike's a 2009 and that something would be sticking. While I'm at it though, since when I got this machine in, the cap was missing off of the reservoir for the rear brake cylinder, I'm going to go ahead and hook this thing up to a vacuum and pull all the old fluid out that's potentially contaminated and make sure that it's got nice, fresh, clear fluid in it. So that's what this video has turned into, is flushing the brake system. Got the wheel assembly off the right hand side. The brakes are going to be the rear right hand side. To point out something while we got this exposed, and I'm not knocking Honda or any other brand, I just want to highlight the fact that they really did something special here. This is a twin caliper system on a disc for the rear. Even the latest Honda I worked on, I think it was a 2015 Rubicon. Really great machine, nice machine. And it was a drum. The customer would drive through water in his, and it would suck up water and suspend water in here. It actually has a drain screw on it. I painted orange for him because he goes across creeks all the time. But when I pulled that drum off, it just poured all over the floor. That's a great idea, great improvement. Nice little things that Arctic did that you might not see at first glance. First method I'm going to show how I typically do brakes is with one of these pressure pots. It uses airline pressure to create a vacuum or a venturi in here. This one came from Harbor Freight. I think it was about $30. Since Harbor Freight has a reputation for things that suck, get stuff that sucks from them, and it keeps sucking. So the way it works, I've got a calibrated zip tie here, and I'll give it a little goose. Hang this up high, and it's drawing vacuum right now. And I'll crack the line open and wait. Here's another way to do it. Just take tubing and connect it to the bleeder line or valve. Run the tubing upwards so you can see bubbles traveling through, and we'll be shutting it off and on as we pump. So I've got everything ready to go. I'm going to reach over here with my right hand, pump the pedal, and crack the line, and then shut it. Pump it, open, and repeat this until I see no air and that the fluid is actually transferred to clear instead of brown. It smells like the inside of a tennis ball or a basketball right now, so I know that fluid is bad. Should have no smell. Just checking on the brake reservoir. I don't like to get it lower than that. There's a chance a bubble might start and we'll have to do the whole process over again. This is a new reservoir. When it came in, it didn't have a cap, so I got a whole new bottle for $12. And I'm going to go ahead and top it off before I start doing the other caliper. So what I like to do is go ahead and swing the reservoir level so you don't spill fluid everywhere. This is a plastic machine, but painted machines are even worse. So that little bit of extra time that you spend will save you in the long run. In Articat fashion, it's not a bolt or a screwdriver, which you'll need in other places. It's not metric, it's not standard, it's Torx. You need a Torx T30 for the assembly to swing it down, which I just loosen it up and get it level. Then you need a Torx 20 for the reservoir cap. So I'm going to go ahead and break that loose and fill it up before we crack open that back line. The rear bleed screw is a 1/4 inch, and I didn't mention it earlier, but the front bleed screw is an 8mm. So you need both standard and metric wrenches, plus screwdrivers, flatheads, Torx. Just a complete set of tools, or be near a hardware store when you work on an Articat. But this next step could be hard if you're by yourself, unless you've got one of those pressure pots like I showed you earlier. I'm going to go ahead and get a little vacuum going and crack the line here, and then go up front and watch the reservoir and keep filling it until I feel like it's been enough. I'll come back and check the tube to make sure it's clear. Last thing I'm going to do tonight is do the fronts. When I was bleeding the rear brake slave cylinder, I noticed it took about 3 refills of the master cylinder reservoir to get all that old fluid out. So that same fluid shared in the front. I'm going to show you a poor man's bleeding system. So you've got the vacuola, which is great, or pressure pot, and then tubing up in the air. This is an old-fashioned way with a bottle. The tubing is submerged in, ideally this would be brake fluid here. And then you connect this into your brake caliper, and air cannot get back in. It would have to pass through fluid downwards. It's not going to happen. So this is free if you've got the tubing already. Let's give this a shot. One last tip: if you're going to use the poor man's method for bleeding with a cap off of a reservoir, any brake reservoir will do this. If you move the lever quickly, it'll shoot a geyser of brake fluid out when it returns to the cylinder or to the reservoir. Could hit you, could land all over the machine and waste your time cleaning up. So this video is to help save time. Thought I'd mention that, and I don't want to show you what happens, but you can see it kind of wanting to. Yeah, there you go. There's a good little example. Check out my other videos for helps on 4-wheelers, general repair stuff to save time. I'm also making pistons from scratch for a Sears 1966 Sears motorcycle if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Talk to you later. Thanks for watching.